But, I mean, there's supposed to be air conditioning.
Wow.
And I've been having trouble with it.
Paying your rent on time?
I actually am paying the rent.
All right.
But it's an old building, and the air conditioning freezes over when you get too excited about being cool. Oh, Lordy.
Shall we get started?
I think we should start. And we're back. Welcome to Recovery in the Middle Ages, the podcast about two middle-aged suburban dads and their pursuit of life, love, and recovery. I'm Nat.
And I'm Mike.
And boy, do I have a show for Mike.
You do? That's very exciting.
Today on RMA, spring celebrations abound. Mike attends Nat's graduation party, and Jed Shred joins us to discuss how Recovery Dharma helps him stay sober. All this and more on a very special edition of RMA.
Awesome.
Go on.
Oh, I was going to do the next part.
Go.
Because, you know.
Yes, that's a forgot we're doing it.
Division of labor and all that. So you can visit us at middleagesrecovery.com. Find us Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Facebook. Things are getting hairy on Facebook.
Yes. People are starting to talk.
Coming in and having discussions with one another. It's great. Sometimes I feel like people are not actually talking to one another, but like across one another.
Well,
but that's Facebook, right? Instagram, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, and Twitter. I saw you've been doing Twitter things recently.
I'm trying to tweet the twits. I'm very intrigued by Twitter because as a marketing person, professionally, it's been one of those like frontiers that I've just been avoiding like the plague. Like
right.
When it started to get popular and I was working in marketing, I kept saying to my clients and myself, this is just a fad. You know, I was that old guy.
I think it's past fad status.
I would just say, no, that's a fad. It's not for you. It can't help. You know, it's only because I was afraid of it because I never used it and I don't understand it. But
it really
I'm trying to.
It really is a horrible place. It just
it's just a horrible place.
It amplifies minority opinions about things, you know,
and
makes them seem much bigger than they actually are in reality, which I suppose is good from a marketing perspective. Anyway, if you don't want to talk to us on Twitter, you can join the discussion on our exclusive and private Facebook
That's
group.
where the real stuff is happening.
Right.
I post stuff there that we both post things there that we don't post in the main page. We've got 5,000 people following us on the main page and about 3,000. You know, so
it is private. It is exclusive. Send us a request, and we will let you in, assuming you answer the questions and you're not some weird model from the Ukraine.
Right. And you have to submit your vaccination card to join. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, there are some strange people that have requested admission.
But I love strange people. I'm a strange people.
Well, I mean, I mean, people that may not have recovery as the thing that's foremost in their mind when they request to join the group. Is all I'm saying.
Right.
Anyway, also, if you want to talk to us, other than listening to us and have an exchange, you can reach out to us on various forms of social media or on our emails, which are posted on the Facebook page and so forth. Great reviews that are given to us will be read on the show. Open your Apple Podcast app, search for our show, click the Drunk Monk, scroll down to where it says reviews, click on write a review, give us 5 stars, tell you how much you love us. You could also just give us 5 stars with no review if writing a review seems onerous and irritating like it does to me for most of the podcasts I listen to. You don't have to do that.
Yeah, and we'll read stuff like if you write something cool on the Facebook page or something. I mean, we prefer the iTunes reviews because it helps, but
right.
You know, reach out.
I don't think you guys realize how important it is for a new podcast to get those reviews and ratings. So if you could help us out, throw us a bone, we would appreciate it. Merchandise is available. I would say it's new merchandise, but it's more or less the same.
It's new because only 3 people are wearing the shirt.
That's right. Oh, actually, hold on. I'll have to block your eyes out. Nat is actually wearing the merch today.
I'm that guy who wears his own merch.
I considered it because I have one of the shirts behind me, like in my little workspace. But I'm like, nah, who does that? Who would wear?
Who does it?
Who does
You're
that?
looking at him. When I was in bands, I loved wearing my merch, man.
I've never seen the Grateful Dead wearing a Grateful Dead T-shirt. They don't even wear tie-dyes.
And you didn't know Jerry. They're more like Eddie Bauer guys.
Jerry, I assure you that Jerry never wore a Grateful Dead T-shirt.
He was just wearing pajama pants.
Two T-shirts, black and red. And if he wore a red one, there were trouble.
Well, look, you don't see Donald Trump wearing Donald Trump ties.
Actually, you do, don't
you? Do you? I don't know.
He probably eats Donald Trump steaks and drinks Donald Trump wine and
that would explain
douches with Donald Trump. Douche. Anyway, so anyway, go to middleagesrecovery.com. That's a website for you kids out there.
Yes, our website has been worked on.
It's still being worked on.
Mike hates it, but I think it's going well.
I don't know. There's
something he doesn't like about it.
The feng shui is not right for me.
It's not feng shui enough.
Yeah. Anyway, so go there, click on the shopping cart. You should see what we have available because there's like 9 copies of the same thing.
You should buy one of each. Wait, you know what? And if you guys have ideas, because like it's just me and Mike here, and Utpal and Jeff helping us out, but we need all of
that's
the
crew.
That's a lot of people.
That's the crew. Only 4 people.
Well, when Jeff gets back from his honeymoon, which I forget when that is, we're getting ready to talk about expanding our merchandise.
Yes. Tell us what you want. Like if you want coffee cups to drink coffee out of or whatever, hide your vodka in at work, whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Let us know and we'll see about making this. The one thing I noticed though is like you have to order like 700 of them.
Well,
like the minimums are a little high.
Well, true, but there are ways to get it's just less expensive.
We should probably have a business meeting rather than having the business meeting on the show.
I agree.
Okay, yeah, tell us your story. We like stories. By logging into middleagesrecovery.com, you can scroll down and fill out our Your Story form, which was inoperative but has now been fixed.
Yes, thank you, Paul.
Or you could just email it to us, either way. And you could hear your review read on the air. And in fact...
Do we have one?
We have one.
Okay. And this is from Shiloh, right?
Right.
Okay, do you want me to read it?
Up to you, man.
All right, let's read it. Hi, Mike and Nat. I am all caught up on your podcast, and I enjoy your banter at the beginning.
You hear that, Aaron?
See? I think it's important that you are relatable as people with normal lives.
Normal being in quotes, as it should be.
Yes, absolutely, because this is the new normal. Life gets in the way, and you show that it's possible to recover and stay sober while dealing with everyday life. I appreciate the books you discuss and the various methods available for recovery. I am fairly new to the recovery mental health world, but when it affected my brother, I needed to become knowledgeable about it. My first venture was the Dopey podcast. Yay, thanks, Dopey. And I started to realize how much I related to the stories. I may not be a true alcoholic by definition, but I drank alcoholically. That's something we can talk about, buddy.
I can relate to that, man, because that was kind of my position.
That's sort of like splitting hairs,
No, it's not. True alcoholic, like I don't understand.
If you're drinking alcoholically, like if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's an alcoholic.
Alcoholic is a term that was invented by.
Okay, but that's your just problem with the word alcoholic more than anything. Not that this.
Yes,
Shiloh has a real problem.
The word is problematic because it comes with a raft of assumptions. It's a very Buddhist thing to actually not use the term alcoholic.
Very Buddhist of you. It was something I hated myself for, and I thought about it all day from the moment I woke up. I didn't want to drink, and I wasn't going, and I wasn't going to. But by the time I got off work, I'd be drinking multiple beers and smoking cigarettes. I tried to quit for a few years and was so hard on myself when I couldn't make it more than a few weeks without drinking. The addiction gene, if there is such a thing, runs deep in my blood. Plus, that is what we were raised with. I've been sober for a year and a half now, and I appreciate not feeling like shit physically and mentally.
Indeed.
I notice how much alcohol plays a part in daily life. It's everywhere, and everyone drinks. You touch on that and how detrimental that is to our health. Yeah, Totally relate, and I think that's why you're relating to the show. It's these are the same realizations that we kind of had. I mean, whether you call yourself an alcoholic, you're drinking alcohol, either way, it's really when you realize how much it harms your life and your happiness and your day to day, and when you finally come to that realization, and then you realize it's not so easy to stop because it's everywhere and it's an addictive substance, and then it kind of dawns on you and you're like, fuck, I got to do something.
Right. That's the definition of an alcohol use disorder.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you for being open and honest about your struggles. I feel the stigma of mental health and addiction wouldn't be as bad if we started to discuss it rather than hide it. Agree. It was so hard to find help and know what to do for my brother. It still is, but people like you make it so much less stressful. You have already provided me with some great resources, and I feel validated. Sincerely, Shiloh. Wow.
Thanks, man.
That is I love that. Thank you so much, Shiloh. And sorry you had to go through that with your brother. And these are the things, and, your own struggles. I mean, these are the things that everybody is dealing with. And just like you said, we should talk about it, and just by not talking about it, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So in talking about it, in being open with my own struggles, of which I have many, I think it helps get the conversation going, and it's going to help people feel like they can talk about it and not feel ashamed. So thank you, Shiloh. Great email.
Shame is the one thing that prevents a lot of people from getting help. A lot of that shame is because people adopt or internalize the label alcoholic, I would argue, but that's...
Hashtag fuck shame.
Yeah.
That's
fuck it.
I think that's an Amy Dresner.
Is it?
Yeah, I like that's one. I like that one. Fuck shame. Hey, do you have a job again? Are you working?
Yeah. After a blissful year of sitting around taking pictures of birds that have been living in my backyard, all of a sudden, all the courts across the nation have reopened seemingly simultaneously,
right?
Which has resulted in a crush of work for this beleaguered and overworked proto-attorney, sitting in my house, making phone calls and doing Zoom mediations and stuff. It's gotten actually quite tense because, of course, everybody wants everything immediately.
Sure, because they've been waiting.
Right. Everybody's just been waiting for something to happen, and now that thing is happening everywhere all at once. So that's a little
but I think
stressful.
Everybody is sort of in different ways, but it's going to affect, how we do our show. I feel like this is something we've talked about this whole time. And I wanted you,
it's hard to
what are the implications for recovery in the Middle Ages when your career picks back up?
Well, I do the best that I can to keep Friday mornings free and clear of stuff, phone calls, whatnot. Occasionally, like a few weeks ago, I had 2 back-to-back on a Friday morning, and I actually... And one of them was a $30 million case, and I hope my boss never listens to this podcast. But I actually made up some excuse and moved the phone call.
That's right.
I moved 5 attorneys to the afternoon, high-powered corporate guys who bill $1,000 an hour. I made them accommodate my schedule because I had to do the podcast. Now, I didn't tell them. That's what I said. I had another call, and I played the other call up against the other call.
The sacrifices we make for our listeners.
Our art.
That's right.
I like to call this art.
It is
what we're making here.
It is. It's very art. So so you can reassure. I mean, listen,
we're not going anywhere.
We're not.
Right?
I closed my store. Like I have if you guys are just listening, I own a retail shop, and I'm the only employee. We record here, and I literally changed my hours. I closed the shop Friday morning so we can do this. So,
I mean, the thing is, we get we get those emails from Shiloh and people that have written us over the years.
It feels like
we're not that, really, over the months that tell us how much this means to them and how important it is to have recovery in the Middle Ages in their lives. And that is a real motivator for pushing other things aside and making sure this has priority. Sort of like you should push other things aside and make your recovery your priority.
That's right. Anything you put above your recovery, you will lose.
Right. And so I don't want to speak for you, Nat, but for me, this is part of my recovery, the work that I do for my recovery, talking to people and out there in the internet lands.
We should make a program that involves you starting a podcast. Like, here's how you get recovery. You make your own podcast.
Right, and then charge for it. Yes. That's like those people that write those books, like I'll show you how to make $1 million, and you send them $5 for the book, and then the book says write a book telling people how to make $5 million. It's there's so much scamming going on out there. But can you hear me clicking this pen? Because this is my nervous thing. You smoke the vaping thing, but
yes,
I do this.
Well, that's twice as annoying as the
vaping. It is annoying. I apologize. So you know what?
No problem.
Something really fun went down last weekend.
It did.
You had your graduation party.
That's right.
And I might add that it's like the first party that Aaron and I have been to in, I can't tell you how long.
Yeah, it's been,
it was so exciting.
It was cool. And it was all, we're celebrating my graduation from college at an advanced age. And we have a lot of good, neighbor friends who we were just like super psyched to get together. And I don't like celebrating myself. As a sufferer of an imposter syndrome, I absolutely hate birthdays. I don't want to be celebrated.
I agree, man. Absolutely.
I hate it because I'm always thinking, if you only, knew.
If you only knew what a piece of shit I am.
But it was so nice. And also just getting you and Aaron over, because I know you don't know all of, like, you live in the same town, but you don't necessarily know these people.
It is so hyper local, the neighbor thing.
Yeah.
And my fucking block is full of like hillbillies and old people.
It's weird.
It's just ridiculous. It's like, it's crazy.
So
your block has like normal suburban people on it.
Yeah, they're pretty cool too. They're not a bunch of phonies. Like, one thing I always worried about, like getting into suburban life as a parent, was like, oh, everyone's going to be such a fucking phony, and like, I'm real, man. And these are like, they're real. They're like cool. They're actually cool people. We like to hang out with them. And I'm glad that you and Aaron could come hang out. And it was really cool. And was there alcohol at the party?
There was alcohol at the party. It was in its separate cooler, which is nice. Right.
And so my joke was, when I was telling people where everything was, I'd say, in the fridge is the alcohol, and in the cooler is the adult beverages.
Right.
That is my shtick.
Well,
nobody got it.
Except
for you.
Yeah. Well, it was also nice being at a party where there was somebody else you knew who was not drinking, because that, I think, is a unique situation for me.
Yeah.
Because I'm coming up on 2 years, and the work thing's been pretty shut down. So that was the first time I went to a party where I knew there was somebody else
who was comfortable.
Yeah.
And that's one of the benefits for me, kind of being out about not drinking. I mean, of course, I don't tell all of my neighbor buddies, the details, unless they're now listening to the podcast, which is starting to happen.
Well, some of them are. Maybe not the ones at your party, though.
They're all practiced in not offering me drinks. They don't act shocked when I'm drinking a seltzer, and it's just a comfortable atmosphere. I'm comfortable with their happiness. I'm happy to have a drink for them.
Right.
I don't regret it. I don't feel bad about it. In fact, you got to meet Sergeant Slaughter, which has been a recurring character on the show.
Before we get to him, I just want to thank you for getting that case of Topo Chico Lime, because that is a delicious seltzer water. We don't have any branding or advertising.
No, I posted a picture of it.
But it was really weird, because I drank one and I was like, oh, this is good. And I had another, and I was drinking them like beers. And it was like, I was there a half an hour. I think I drank 3 of them. And I was like, man, I got to back off this shit.
Yeah, man, I got to drive home.
It's a little, I just had to pee a lot, which was the problem. But, the other thing about going to a party like that sober, I used to go to a party and I would just drink. And the food would be there, and I would be sort of conscious in the back of my head that there was food there if I wanted to eat, but I would never eat it. I would eat like a bunch of chips. But you put out quite a nice spread. I mean, you had Mikey Clams was there.
Oh yeah, my clammer buddy came.
And I've always been hesitant to eat the clams that come out of our bay, just because
it's probably gross. I don't know. They taste so good.
I grew up around here. I know what that bay looked like in the 70s, and man, I wouldn't have eaten a clam out of there then. But it seems like it's recovered quite nicely. So, but the clams were excellent. Yeah, and then you had the big Italian hero, and there was all this other food, and I was like, I finally went to a party and actually ate.
Yes,
and that was a wonderful thing.
And I was so happy to see everybody, having fun. And again, my old friend Sergeant Slaughter, who we've talked about before, he actually made an effort to come. I didn't know if he'd be able to because he works, but he came out and he got to meet
That was
Mike.
So weird, man.
Yeah, because he didn't know who you were. I mean, he knows you from the show, but he doesn't know what you look like.
Right.
And so finally, I was like, hey, Joe, do you want to meet Mike, quote unquote. And so he did. And how did that go?
It was weird, man, because I was talking to him for a little while and he kept dropping things and I'm like,
stuff from the show.
Yeah. And I don't know this guy. So eventually I just grabbed him. I was like, you know an awful lot about me. And I'm finding that very weird.
Yeah. I know.
And he just kind of laughed. I mean, I found him to be a perfectly pleasant, nice guy. I mean, we talked about bird watching and stuff.
Yeah. And, you guys share a passion for the avian photography, I guess, or following birds.
Yeah. I don't know. He made brief reference to his drinking, but it's not really something we're going to stand there and talk about at a party. So
yeah, well, but he actually said something that I want to talk about in the show. He kind of asked me, he's like, because we had alcohol, people were drinking, but I wasn't, and he said, "Doesn't this drive you crazy?"
Oh yeah,
and I thought that was a really good question, and a long time ago, it would have driven me crazy. And let me say that I wouldn't, and I didn't have alcohol at my house for parties for years because I wasn't comfortable. So the only reason I do that now is because I'm at a point in my recovery where I feel comfortable having alcohol in the house, and it doesn't call out to me in the middle of the night. Like, for a while, if there was any alcohol in the house, as soon as my wife went to bed or wasn't home, I would sneak it as fast as, and I think other alcoholics can relate to this, that desperate sneaking of like running outside and there's a beer hiding behind the garbage can. Oh, I'm just going to go take the garbage out. And you've got a hidden 6-pack. And then I would, drain like 3 or 4. And God forbid the neighbor was looking out his window. Like, you know what I mean? But that
you can always tell who the alcoholic is. Who has the alcohol use disorder in town on recycling mornings.
Yes, you can.
Especially people are running out at like 5 a.m. right before the truck comes. Do
you think John the Can Man knows exactly who the alcoholics are? Because he goes, he's in my neighborhood too. He comes around collecting cans. Yeah. But the answer is I don't. It doesn't drive me crazy. What it does is it makes me feel really good that I can be at a party or can have a party with mixed company like that, where it's not like, and one thing I didn't love about the AA culture was it was like, stick with the sober people and only do that.
Stick with the winners.
And it's actually a very good idea to do that for a lot of people early on, and I'm not poo-pooing that, but for me, I like a variety of people, and I like to be safe. So when I finally got to a point where I could feel safe around alcohol, I wanted all of my, normies,
alcoholic
so to speak.
Come over.
The active alcoholics. You know what I mean? So it didn't drive me crazy. It made me super happy that I could make other people happy. As a people pleaser, this is my dream.
Making people happy is a wonderful thing. What I noticed was, when I first got there, I met one of your neighbors who was a really great guy, talking to another one of your neighbors, but they were like drinking a soda, but then they both got into this conversation like, oh, the next one's going to be a beer, It's like they're like really into it. And I was like, oh wow, that's interesting, I can't wait to get to the beer.
Well, I wonder what the conversation is, because at most parties, people will bring a bottle of wine or bring alcohol, and now they all know I do not drink. And so I wonder, and I don't know how many of them know it's because I had a problem or for what reason, but maybe they assume it. I made a comment once or twice, early on, like I used to drink a lot and now I don't drink it at all, or I'm allergic. When I drink, I break out in handcuffs. I've made some jokes like that, and they knew I couldn't drive for a bit.
I think they know what's going on.
They do.
I think they didn't know where I was, so they were talking,
right?
About getting beers and stuff, and maybe looking for like a partner in crime or something. I don't know, but I demurred and grabbed another Topo Chico.
I want them to be comfortable. I don't want them to feel like they can't enjoy themselves. Right? Obviously, I don't want people getting wasted at my house, but I just want people to be comfortable and not be weirded out that I'm
that's understandable. Your parents, by the way, lovely people. I talked to your dad for a while.
Finally, and they were like, were we supposed to come? And they actually weren't supposed to come.
Really?
Yeah, but I wanted them to come because, like I said, this graduation is as much their success as mine. They've been so supportive of my education, and it was cool, right? You got to talk to the old attorneys.
I love talking to those guys. They got a million stories, always usually very well read.
Yeah.
Not like the younger attorneys today who don't really.
Yeah, my dad is a reader. Both my parents run like book clubs, and they do classic literature, and they do some new stuff. But
very lovely people.
I mean, he can talk and tie everything back to the Ottoman Empire if you give him enough time. And that's where my vocab comes from. But one thing that I thought was interesting, you kind of started, doing a few more, like on top of all your work and your podcasting, you have all these other hobbies.
Yeah.
And you shocked me when the other day you said, I'm going scuba diving.
Yeah.
And to me, that sounds like impossible, but we actually live on an island.
We do.
And I forget that sometimes.
But our water is very chilly. So I don't know. So I got certified scuba diving in 2006, which is like a long time ago.
Yeah.
And then I didn't dive for a little while when the kids were young. But if you're going to live up here and you want to dive, the only solution is to get yourself like a dry suit, which is not a wetsuit because you're dry inside, and go diving around here.
But I always thought that the sea life in the where we are is not like in the tropical where everything's colorful and that the water is murky. Is that all wrong? And there's
some of the water's murky. It depends on what you do. And I was thinking about this actually on the drive over here this morning, how, I got certified as a tech diver. So like diving on wrecks below the limits of recreational diving, doing the decompression stuff.
Oh my God. I want to learn how to do that stuff so bad.
But I was doing all that while I was like, drinking. Which is dangerous,
Yeah.
But I would, I knew when I had enough control that I could sort of reel it in when I needed to, but not enough that nights before I was going out to do a dive on, say, the Oregon, which is at 135 feet off the coast of Long Island, that I would still drink 3 glasses, maybe 4 the night before. I'd go out on the boat. I'd be miserable the whole way out there. I'd be sick.
Did you go into withdrawals at all from alcohol? Were you drinking that much?
No.
That's good.
No. I mean, withdrawals. What would it? Physical?
Little shaky.
Yeah. Well,
major anxiety, sweating.
Minor anxiety. And minor anxiety at scuba diving, not a good mix, right? Because there really is like a checklist when you're on a boat and you're bobbing above a wreck and you're trying to get dressed and the boat's moving and there's like 6 other guys in the boat.
I can't imagine that. And look what happens to me when we're about to do a podcast. Imagine I was about to go diving.
You got to go through a mental checklist, and if you fuck up your mental checklist, that's bad, because like if you jump in the water and you don't have your weights or something, or you don't have your,
I get anxiety thinking about
mix in your tanks and everything. So the fact that I was doing that and while I was still a little,
And what I wanted to say was that not only did you go scuba diving, but did you go with a listener?
I did. I did.
He didn't win a contest or anything to go scuba diving with you. It's just somebody we knew.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what he does. I
think
it's interesting because like when it comes to like podcasting, like in this area, I know quite a bit. And then when it comes to the area of diving, I mean, he knows everything because he owns the dive shop and he's the dive guy.
Yep.
So I'm very much a student when I'm with him, even though, I'm certified and everything.
Sure.
I always look to him because he has a level of expertise and he's extremely competent and very good at what he does.
And it's cool. It's really cool. Just the idea that this scuba diving is going on. But yeah, I finally...
You can dive off, you can dive off the beach though. You don't have to go out on a boat to the middle of nowhere. So where I went the other day was out in the Hamptons. There's a bridge that goes across from Dune Road to the mainland. And under that bridge is a startling variety of sea life for Long Island. Okay. If you wait until August and you go, the tropical fish are blown up either through a storm or through the Gulf Stream and kind of get lost, and a bunch of them end up under there. So you can see tropical angelfish and so on. Yeah. And because it's an underwater structure, there's a lot of fish. And I'm sorry this is not a podcast on scuba diving because I could talk about that all day. But it was a great dive, even though the water temperature was 52 degrees.
That sounds awesome. So are we going to have a contest to go scuba diving with Mike? I want to move this along a little bit. Because we do have the great Jed Shred coming on. He's going to call in.
He is? Or are we going to call him?
We're going to call him.
We're going to call him. We should do that.
But, after we do the show last week, what I do is when I think of things I want to say or that come to me, I write them down, and then I put them on the outline. And it's just something that I was writing down that I was thinking this week. After the graduation party, I was doing a lot of reflecting. And one of the things, I'll just read you what I wrote, and then we can discuss it. I was just thinking about how I used to lead a double life. I was a deacon at my church, a Sunday school teacher, a PTA dad. I wasn't in the PTA, but I'm like, the dad of children that's active in the community and a jolly neighbor. But I had this secret life at night, basically, and during the day eventually, which, and that I was hiding, that I hoped no one would find me out and find out that I was living this lie. So like I had this version of me that I wanted to be, that I projected, and I did everything in my power to be that person.
Probably overprojected.
Right. And that was part of my depression, I think, is because I wasn't living up to my own projection of the person I was. And so a lot of the work I've done in the past 4 years almost, is to make my real self match what I'm trying to project. And I think I've done that. And there's a certain amount of joy. And it's one of the reasons I can come on this show and reveal all of these shocking secrets, so to speak, of my past and the things I used to do, because I'm at a place where that's not me anymore.
Right.
I live what I think is an authentic life, of course, except for the fact that this is an anonymous podcast and I don't want anybody to know. But the truth is, I kind of do. As you notice, I'm not that anonymous.
Well, it's getting more authentic by the day, because it seems like the circle of people that listen to this locally continues to expand.
I have mixed feelings about that.
So do I. I mean, I had a encounter with someone last week who apparently listened to a couple of episodes, and not sure how he found out about it. The story he gave didn't really compute. Like, well, Nat posted something on Facebook, and I followed a link, and somehow I found the podcast, and I'm like,
I'm pretty careful about that.
We're pretty good about that. I don't think that's how that happened.
And look, it's okay. I get it. It might make some of these people feel awkward, like... And it makes us feel awkward, but it shouldn't, because I'm confident about who I am. And part of what we're doing here is bringing this stuff to light to say, like, yeah, maybe you look at me and say, wow, he's got his shit together and he looks happy. But the truth is that I might have looked like that before, but this is what was really going on.
Right.
And here is how I fixed that, or here's how I worked on that and got better. And I want people to know that they can do that, because a lot of people live lives like this.
Right.
They're putting one face out. I mean, this is very normal to do that. It's not like evil or horrible, but this is, for me, happiness means coming to terms with, matching up what I'm putting out as far as who I am and what I actually am. So I wanted to make that.
You never really know what's going on inside of somebody. I mean, what does they always say right after they arrest the serial killer? He seemed like such a nice guy.
He seemed so nice. He went scuba diving a lot and birding.
I mean, just by the fact that the information, or the fact that we're doing this podcast, has been getting out in the community. It's kind of forcing me to be more open about where I'm at with drinking and recovery. And, I don't really care who knows what in this town. I mean, this town is really weird, though. It trades on gossip and salaciousness and stuff like that. Yeah, but I find
people are generally pretty cool.
Yeah,
like when it comes down to it.
They are. But they're nosy, too. Yeah. Like any small town, sure. Right? I mean, but the flip side of that is, like, in my work use, like, a mild level of alcoholism was expected, and it was the norm. I kept the drug years a secret from my coworkers, like, because you can't be just sitting around. You can sit around and laugh about how many beers you had last night, but if you were like, and then I went out scored some crack and I've been up for 2 days, that wouldn't fly, But the alcohol use was accepted. It was encouraged, So, I didn't really have to keep that part hidden.
So it's an evolution. We're evolving, and We're evolving, and I just wanted to say that I think the other points I was making before we get to Jed, and that should be after this, is now that I've graduated college now, and I'm looking to change my career or add parts to my career. And I am seeking advice. It's not like people are just giving me unsolicited advice.
Listeners, please drop Nat an email if you have any ideas about what he should do with the next 5 or 10 years of his life. And the best suggestions will be read on the show.
Yeah, the best suggestions will be read on the show. And because I've been talking about, maybe I want to get my teaching certificates and masters, or I want to get into therapy or do recovery coaching. And I also am doing the store. And, so there's so much. And people who are teachers are giving me lots of advice. I'm going in lots of different directions. And it made me think, like, how I've gotten very good at dealing with getting advice from people, because it used to be very intrusive to me and drive me nuts. Like, people, what you should do? When I open the store, people, what you should do? What you should do?
I hate that expression.
And what I do is I wrote here, how to deal with people's advice without having to agree with it, or your plans to follow the advice or not. Like, How do you do that? What I do is you don't have to decide whether or not you will take the advice from that person or explain to them whether or not you will follow it, unless you want to have more clarifying questions. Otherwise, I just thank them for the advice and then change the subject.
Yeah.
Like, I don't try and have the debate with the person giving me the advice about whether or not I'll take it.
No.
I don't even question the logic to it usually, unless it's really outlandish. I'll just be like, great, thank you so much for that advice. And then I move on because I don't want to have that conversation because I don't care necessarily what they think.
Are you asking people for advice, or are people just volunteering sua sponte, as they say?
I'm getting
in the legal
both.
profession?
Sua sponte, that's a good one. I get both.
Huh.
Yeah.
Because, I don't give advice unless people ask me for advice, because people tend not to take the advice that they don't ask for.
Right.
And they tend to take the advice that they follow, that they ask for, tends to be advice that confirms what they already believe. Right. So there doesn't seem to be much point in saying you should do this, or maybe you can say maybe you might want to consider this.
But people are very like, this is what you should do. Here's how you should do it. Or looking at something you are doing, you need to do. And then instead of saying, no, I don't, or what do you mean? You don't have to do that. You do. I just say, oh, great. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Hey, thank you. I just thank you.
Yeah.
Can I get you something to drink?
I'll carefully consider your words of wisdom.
Yeah. I'm not interested in debating with people about what it is I should or shouldn't do. So with that, I think we will call the great Jed Shred for our Recovery Dharma interview. Jed is a person in long-term recovery who actively hosts and attends Recovery Dharma meetings. When I think of Buddhist Recovery, he's the first name that pops up. And what are you playing?
It's the Heart Sutra. Hold on, I'm getting to my phone.
Om Shri Mahalakshmi We Swaha.
Okay.
Om Shri.
Let's try. Oops.
Mahalakshmi.
Try this thing. Okay.
Just.
Is that too loud? Only in my ear holes, right?
I think it's okay. Let's wait till he talks and see if it's.
Hello.
Hey,
hello,
Jed.
Jed. How are you?
Hey, how's it going?
This is Mike and Nat.
Hey, welcome to Recovery of the Middle Ages, Jed. I'm so happy that you picked up the phone.
We never know with our guests whether at the last second they're going to be like, not those two clowns. I can't do it.
Oh, I'm happy to be here. Thanks, guys.
Well, where are you? What part of the country are you in? I'm not sure what the 913 is.
I'm in Kansas City, Missouri.
Love Kansas City. One of my favorite cities. Yeah.
I think that's the home of Rawlings baseball bats and stuff like that.
Also,
isn't it?
Hallmark cards.
Really?
They have a very interesting World War I memorial.
And it's the home of Recovery Dharma.
I don't know about that, but at least for our group it is, yeah.
Yeah, so the reason I wanted to get Jed on is because the last episode, Mike is very interested and he's been studying Buddhism and now he's in recovery. So we're very interested in this kind of recovery model. And on the Dopey Nation, that's how I know Jed. We're both big Dopey fans and are involved in the Dopey Nation Facebook group and all of those things. And they have these Zoom recovery meetings, which are great. I don't go to nearly enough, but there is one that Jed runs for the Recovery Dharma. And I really wanted to hear first, I think we wanted to hear a little bit of your story beforehand, if that's okay.
Sure.
And then kind of how Buddhism and Recovery Dharma sort of shaped your sobriety.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of weird because I started getting interested in Buddhism, practicing Buddhism, roughly around the same time as I would say my addiction started. That was back in high school. And I started out with weed, and that was pretty just here and there for a while, but then started drinking not too long after that. And I think once I started drinking, that was when it really kind of took off.
Yeah, to multiply the effects. Right?
Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, pretty much from high school till about 2 years or so ago, I was, I'd say my weed and alcohol were definitely my primary drugs of choice. And then later in the later years of active addiction, so probably from like 24 to 27, I got really into harder drugs, but I was kind of a garbage head, you know. I'd take pretty much anything that would get me out of my head. But my other drugs of choice besides booze and weed were ecstasy for a while.
I remember ecstasy.
That was somebody in the Dopey Nation when I was talking about ecstasy and my experience with it mentioned that the other name for ecstasy is misery, and and that was definitely my experience. That was the one drug that you know almost took me out.
Wow.
But then after that, I got really into LSD for a few years.
Yes.
So LSD, weed, booze, those were the big thing for a while for me until I got sober.
Stayed on the psychedelic end of things. You never abused canned air, did you? Nat apparently did. I did that. I can't quite get my head around that.
It was like a period, sort of like, you know, Picasso's blue period. I had a canned air period.
Yeah, no, I never did that, but I know you guys were talking about nitrous and whippets the other week, and I definitely did my fair share of that.
Yeah, that was fun.
Hippies.
Hippie crack. Good times.
Yeah, I was just telling somebody like a hippie speedball is what was it, a whippet and a kratom shot or something like that. It's a hippie speedball.
Yeah, I never tried any of the kratom, but yeah.
Did you what type of Buddhism were you did you first get into when you were in high school? Because that's kind of where it started with me. I kind of stumbled into a Zen, a couple of books on Zen, and then kind of followed that vein for a number of years.
Yeah, so my older brother is really the one that got me into Buddhism, and he was into Tibetan Buddhism, okay. And so that's kind of where I started. And there's one of the few sort of Buddhist centers in Kansas City is a Tibetan temple, and so I would go there pretty frequently in high school, and I took my first refuge vows there.
That's amazing. And this is all in Kansas City, Missouri?
Yeah.
See, to me, from like an East Coast snob type of person, like that's amazing that this is going on all over the country, that's even possible.
Kansas City is pretty
It is,
chill.
I know, I've heard that, but I'm very myopic as a New Yorker, so I think everywhere else is just, hay and cows and things.
There are a lot of Christians in that part of the country.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Buddhism is definitely not huge here. And definitely at the time I was first getting into it, it was less big than it is maybe now. But yeah, there were only a few places you could go for Buddhism in Kansas City, even still to this day. I mean, in New York and like LA, I'm sure there's tons more.
There you can pick. I'm off the top of my head, I'm thinking like 3 different sects of Tibetan Buddhism, a bunch of Zen temples, it's all, I mean, we're spoiled when it comes to the availability of various Buddhist things.
So you were into Buddhism, and this is while you were still using. So was it that when you finally decided to get sober, you started probably, I mean, did you explore just like standard 12-step? And, when you got ready to get clean or someone was making you, whenever it started, when did you decide, there's a Buddhist angle to this, or there's this other recovery modality that works for me? How did that go down?
Yeah, so I was kind of in and out of Buddhism and like learning about it and practicing it for all the years of my active addiction, because those things don't really go well together.
Mindfulness and weed, not such a great pairing.
No, definitely not. Even if you're not high at the time you're trying to meditate or something, it's still hard when you're just living that lifestyle.
Sure.
But I kind of drifted away from Buddhism in the last few years of my active addiction, and then when I was trying to get sober, or basically mostly trying to quit drinking at the time, I was kind of thinking, maybe if I get back into Buddhism and get back to meditating regularly, that could help me. And so I started kind of reintroducing myself to Buddhism, listening to some podcasts. And on one podcast, the author, or the guy that started Refuge Recovery, who is kind of a controversial person, but
is that like
I
Noah?
didn't know that
Noah Levine.
Noah Levine.
Apparently, he got caught dipping his encouragement stick in the wrong bodhisattva or something. I'm not really sure how.
Something along those lines. Yeah, and I didn't know about that at the time, but I just heard him on this podcast, talking about Refuge Recovery and his experience as an addict, and that kind of changed everything for me, because that's when I found out, there's actually a Buddhist approach to this whole addiction recovery stuff. And I had tried like a few AA meetings years before that, and just it didn't really jive with me. I think it was particular meeting that I went to, but because I don't have anything against 12-step or AA for the most part. But yeah, once I found out about Refuge Recovery, which is where I started, and my group, we eventually switched over to Recovery Dharma after I was already involved with that for about a year.
Is that a big difference? Yeah, because I'm just learning about all of this, but even though you've been doing it on the Dopey Nation for a while, I haven't engaged, so to speak. But now that I'm reading about it, I wonder. I was a little confused when I was starting to do the research for the show, because you have this. It's like Refuge Recovery and Recovery Dharma, and so what is the difference?
So there's not really a big difference. They're both Buddhist recovery programs. Recovery Dharma was born out of the whole controversy around Noah Levine, not just his sort of scandal, but also the idea that he was kind of too big of a personality involved with Refuge Recovery. He was kind of trying to control the whole thing, according to the people that split off from Refuge Recovery and started Recovery Dharma.
Interesting.
So Recovery Dharma was created out of a split from Refuge Recovery. And it's basically, the book is probably about Recovery Dharma is probably about half the length of Refuge Recovery. It's kind of just a more straightforward, simplified version, I think. And we, in our Monday group, that's the Zoom group, with some dopey people, we switch back and forth every week between reading out of Refuge and reading out of Recovery Dharma. Because we appreciate both books, and we kind of just try to separate sort of, the message from the messenger when it comes to Refuge Recovery.
Yeah, I think that's super important. And just, as a parallel, because I did my rounds in NA, AA, and CA, and HA. And I was sort of the same way with NA and AA. I would go to the different groups, and I read both the basic text and the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. and I would sense a lot of animosity in the members of the respective groups toward, the other. And I never understood that, why there was, I have my theories as to why, the NA people sort of feel like scorned children compared to AA because it was born out of it and they don't want to be connected with it. And their word is clean, not sober. And they have all of these little weird quirks that I always thought were just very strange. But just the parallel between Noah Levine and Bill Wilson, it's really kudos to Bill Wilson for not going down that road. He was always so careful, I think, about, making sure that he wasn't trying to be bigger than the program. So that's really kudos to him, but very, very interesting.
Buddhism in this country, scandals are sadly tend to be typically more the norm than the exception.
Yeah.
It's almost in every Zen community I've ever been associated with, there was always some hanky-panky or shenanigans going on. And some of it was sexual, but some of it was just power tripping. And, that's, I don't really know much about what went on with Levine, but...
but it's but Jed's right. It's the Recovery Dharma. It's great. We're saying that this program is great. The ideas are helpful and groundbreaking. Now let's get away from this personality because look, we're human. He's human, and so that's very interesting. And so, and you run the. How does a Recovery Dharma? Some of us know how a 12-step meeting goes. What goes on at a Recovery Dharma meeting?
So. The basic format is the beginning of the meeting. We read a little bit about the program and how the program works, and then we read a little bit on the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. And then we have about 4 or 5 people right now in the Monday group that rotate leading the meeting. And so whoever's leading the meeting will lead a guided meditation for about 10 to 15 minutes.
That's cool.
There's a bunch of different, there's a bunch of different meditations that we do that we kind of rotate through. And then we read a selection out of one of the books, and after that, we have time for sharing, just like pretty much any other recovery meeting. That's the basic format of it.
I love the sound. I love the idea of that. I still get a lot out of regular 12-step meetings, but now that I've dabbled in meditating, and from what I'm studying about Buddhism, I really love the philosophy. It really and I feel like this just sounds like to me, I think of the word safe when I hear you talking about the way that the meetings run. I feel like I would feel so safe in that environment to meditate and to be guided through something like that. So that's really cool. I really am going to, I know he says, I'm going to go to more meetings, but I really, really, really want to.
Are there live meetings in Kansas City, Recovery Dharma meetings?
So, we were doing in-person meetings back before the pandemic hit, and then we are about to start up in-person meetings in about a month. So in June, we'll be starting back up with our in-person meetings.
I was I was surprised to see how many there are, like all over the country. There's a list on the website there, and what do you think that it is that attracts people to a more Buddhist sort of view of recovery? Do you think it's the fact that it's not based in 12-step, or that you don't have to believe in God or a higher power necessarily? Because I was on the Refuge or Recovery Dharma Facebook group the other day, and somebody posted, I saw, a question that said, how do you deal with depression without a belief in God? And I don't know if you're active on that group or not, but there were some really thoughtful responses about the difference between a Buddhist-centered approach to recovery and something like a 12-step group. I mean, obviously, there were some people that said, no, you can't recover without God, but they were, skillfully redirected, perhaps. And I thought that was very interesting. So I know that's like 5 questions in there, but maybe you could talk on that a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that I think the big thing is the fact that it doesn't require or encourage, a belief in a higher power. I mean, you could, you can practice Buddhism and still believe in God, although if you get into the really sort of nitty-gritty sort of traditional teachings of Buddhism, it will basically tell you there's no reasonable there's no reason to have a belief in God, basically. But yeah, I think that's the primary thing, is that you don't have to do that. You don't have to submit to some power greater than yourself. And also, I think Recovery Dharma is it's a lot more sort of, you kind of get a lot more freedom to sort of do things the way you would want to do them. Now, I think that can be a little bit tricky for some people because, I think some, especially newly sober or people that are trying to get into recovery or get sober kind of need some direction.
Right.
So they can get that if they want it, but basically, nobody's gonna force you to work a program the way they want you to work it, and that's kind of what I really like about it. Like, I kind of sometimes say I don't even really work a Recovery Dharma program. I just kind of work Buddhism,
right?
And I go to Recovery Dharma meetings.
Mm-hmm.
I don't write out like inventories and stuff like that. I just don't feel like that's necessary for me. I tried it like the first time I started Refuge Recovery. I wrote one inventory, and I think it was pretty ridiculous, and it ended with me saying oh, well, at the end of this inventory here, I wrote I can still smoke weed, and that's okay. and I look back at that thinking, wow,
that's the problem sometimes.
Pretty naive of you.
Well, I mean, meditation is sort of foundational in Buddhism, and I guess it's a foundational aspect of Recovery Dharma as well, right? I mean, so you can't help but turn the lens inward. So, I mean, you're doing a searching and fearless inventory of yourself.
Every time you meditate.
Of your no self, every time you sit on the cushion.
Exactly. That's kind of the way I look at it. It's I'm doing inventory every single day when I sit down to meditate. And that's meditation is kind of the one thing where I would say, if you want to be successful in a Recovery Dharma or Buddhist-based recovery program, that's the one thing you have to do. Mm-hmm. There's no ways around that. That's anything else, any other way you want to do it, you can kind of customize it yourself, but meditation's the one thing you need to do. Every day.
What does your daily practice look like? Because as a novice at meditating myself, I'm always very confused about it. I actually, a while ago, I started inquiring about, transcendental meditation, and I kind of got freaked out by the pyramid scheme type of look that it has. And I got the Headspace app. One thing that got me through the pandemic without using was I forced myself to meditate by listening to guided meditations through Headspace, and it really worked out. But I'm still not clear on what is a good practice. What do you do? I want to know what the experts are doing. How do you practice, on a daily basis?
I don't know that I'm any sort of expert, but so I kind of these days I take a very kind of traditional approach to Buddhism. I used to be more what you might call a secular Buddhist, which is kind of like kind of really a modern kind of scientific-y based Buddhist type of Westerner. But these days I come at it more from a what would be called Theravada or insight tradition approach. So my meditation routine is basically every morning after I've kind of woken up, I use what's a meditation bench. It's kind of a weird thing.
A Seiza bench?
I think you could. I think that's what. I'm not sure.
The Japanese
exactly sure what those
term for it.
Yeah. That's what it is. And I use that. I do. I do some recitations. I do about 15 minutes usually of reciting some things in Pali, which is like the language that the original Buddhist suttas or discourses were written in. I do that, and then I say my refuge vows in Pali, which are going for refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Then I take my 5 precepts, which are refraining from killing or harming living beings, refraining from stealing or taking things that are not freely given to me, refraining from false speech, so lying, harsh speech, speaking unkindly to people, divisive speech, which could be seen as like gossiping or like trying to turn people against one another. And then there's sexual misconduct is a big one. And what's the last one?
Honor thy father and mother.
And
no intoxicating substance.
No
shalt not steal.
The most important precept: no intoxicants for a recovering addict.
Yeah, kind of a big one, right?
Yeah. And then I usually chant a sutra. That's a pretty popular sutra called the Metta Sutta. And then I do about a minimum of 30 minutes of basically Vipassana meditation is what I would call it. So it has to do with just trying to develop concentration on your breath and body, and using that concentration as a way to settle your mind down just enough so you can watch how it works, kind of how it moves and how sort of thoughts come up and why they kind of come up, that kind of thing.
This sounds really cool. I really love this stuff. I'm an outsider, but like for me, like compared to all of the other recovery stuff that I've studied or done, like I feel like this Buddhist recovery, it's so like advanced. I feel like it's like spiritually advanced, like pro level inner work, like it's one thing, like it's great to pray. I'm a Christian myself. And one thing I loved about Recovery Dharma was, as a Christian, an open-minded Christian, this doesn't like conflict with any basically of the most important beliefs that I have. And then it maybe that's just me making it work because I wanted to, but for me, it fits right in with just like understanding yourself and, doing that work and being, reflecting on yourself. And I think I love this. I really do. I'm really happy that I started studying this a little bit. It sounds great. And it seems to have worked for you. I mean, you find that you're finding a lot of inner peace, like comparatively, when you're not doing the practices. If you let it slip for a few days, do you really feel the difference?
Yeah, definitely. Like I actually, I just got back from from being out of town for a few days, and there were about two days in there where I really just didn't have like any time to meditate, and I mean I maybe got in like 5 minutes on one of those days, and yeah, I can definitely feel a big difference in those couple days. I usually kind of try to prepare myself for times like that if I know they're coming. Try and get a little extra practice in before them. But yeah, it's almost like you didn't take a medication that you need to take, like,
right,
kind of thing.
You definitely feel it when you skip a day or two. I've been lately, I had a couple of business trips, and that's probably going to start ratcheting up a little more in the next few months. But doing it on the road is interesting, because you don't have your, like I kneel, but I don't have a bench. I use cushions, and I can't bring those with me, halfway across the country. So, I found myself perched in a hotel bed with this stuff under my butt, trying to make that work. And,
making it work.
But you really have to. It's a daily practice. It's like brushing your teeth. At some point, it gets to be that essential. Are you a vegetarian? Just out of curiosity.
No,
okay.
I'm not.
Yeah.
Is that necessary because you're not harming animals?
I mean, the Dalai Lama is not a vegetarian. His doctor told him he tried it, but the doctor said, I think
he eats primarily a Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
The Dharamsala Chick-fil-A.
The vegetarian thing is it's kind of it's definitely controversial, and it's, I think it's better to maybe try, if you're going to be a Buddhist, maybe it's better to try and not eat so much meat all the time. But
in Kansas City, that's difficult.
Yeah, it's difficult. But like overall, veganism in the Mahayana sect of Buddhism, which is kind of the later sort of Chinese. Zen is Mahayana. Some people say Tibetan is, but
that's where I live. That's my neighborhood.
Yeah.
The Zen.
Yeah, and the Buddha, he taught his original monks that you go, they go out and they depend on the lay people, the community, for their food, donating their food.
Right.
And so they were not allowed to reject offerings of food to them. So that included meat. The only little caveat was that if they had reason to believe that the animal they were eating was killed specifically for them, or if they saw or heard the animal being killed, then they weren't supposed to take it, but otherwise they would eat it. And then also, technically eating meat, according to traditional Buddhism, doesn't go against the not killing precept. And it's kind of a gray area, but it's because I am specifically not killing the animal, I am not breaking the precept technically.
It's a little legalistic.
And the animal wasn't. It is a little
splitting
bit like
hairs.
That. It is definitely splitting hairs, but also at the same time, they talk about this in the Refuge Recovery book. They say something like, we recognize that we live in a world with a food chain, and that eating meat is just kind of a realistic thing to do. And that even if you're a vegetarian or a vegan, there's lots of animals like insects and stuff that die in the process of creating those foods. So it's a tricky thing.
So, given that discussion of meat, are you more a Jack Stack barbecue guy or a Joe's Kansas City? Because
I don't know what either of those things are. Are you making inside Kansas City jokes?
I am.
I have no idea.
I spent a fair amount of time eating at both of those places.
All I know about is bagel places and pizza places. I don't know anything about that.
You need to come to Kansas City, Nat. I'll show you.
We can't wait to go on tour, man.
But that's a tough one. I have a lot of favorites, but I'd say Joe's is up there above Jack Stack.
Awesome. All right. Are we bumping up against the clock?
We are. I mean, I could talk to Jed all day.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
So why don't we wrap it up now? But I just wanted to say, Jed, it's so great to talk to you. And, Jed and I have sort of been interacting in the way that people do on Facebook groups.
Right.
But, it's been really great to get to know you, Jed. And I'm really pleased that you listened to our show at all. I was really happy to hear that.
I love it.
It made me really happy when I said, okay, Jed said he liked the show. And even though we never met, it's such a weird thing with this Facebook. But I really appreciate it. And I respect your opinion a lot. And that's why we had you on. And I'm hopefully I'll get off my ass and I'm going to finish reading the Recovery Dharma book. I promise. But I plan on really studying it more, and we appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on, Jed. And hopefully we can get you on again if you had fun, and we'll pay you the same amount as we did this time, which is exactly what we make. Right. But thank you so much, Jed.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jed.
Take care, man. Bye.
Bye, guys.
All right.
That was great. And it's always awkward to end those calls.
It is because, you could just keep talking all day and then.
It's true. And I was talking to Dopey Dave from the Dopey podcast about it. And I was saying, how do you close an interview? And he's like, I don't know. He's like, it's just every single time it's awkward,
Eventually you run out of things to talk about.
Yeah. And you're like, we'll talk to you later. But thank you so much, Jed. That was so great. And I knew he was really well versed in that. And I see how active he is on the Zoom meetings. And
definitely.
I would like to say that we will be right back after these words.
So do you always sing when you pee or just after having 2 double espressos?
No, it helps me. I do that. Actually always do that.
Do you really?
Because
it must be fun at home.
Yeah, I have to sing.
Where's Daddy? Oh, okay, he's peeing because I can hear the singing coming from the bathroom.
Sometimes I go full operatic in my house, which I will not do on this microphone, and it helps me go. But we're back, and that was really cool. I can't say this enough. I love this Recovery Dharma stuff.
I can't say it enough. I love the Dharma stuff. Keep it going.
So, thank you, Jed. Moving right along. Do you know what time it is?
Yes, I do.
What time is it?
It's time for Recovery in the News.
Yeah! All right. Recovery in the news. Recovery in the news. Recovery in the news, motherfucker.
Every time it gets me. Every time. So this week's Recovery in the News article comes from connectradiofm.com. It's about some fellow named Lamar Odom, who I guess plays sports ball. He speaks on his recovery.
He's a basketballer.
Using ketamine to treat addiction. Now, ketamine, in my recollection, was a drug that you took to tranquilize animals or take it at a rave.
Yeah, ketamine at a rave, huh? I mean, I used to do it in college. I had a roommate whose girlfriend knew how to make it, and so she was like baking. She had the liquid.
Ketamine cakes?
It was weird. Yeah, kind of. She would get the liquid. I guess it was veterinarian stuff.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And you take the liquid, and somehow she would put it in our oven. We had an apartment, and then she'd come out with all this. She would make the freaking ketamine, and I would take.
Did you take ketamine?
Oh, yeah, sure. I've done everything except for PCP.
How was ketamine?
Ketamine, it just kind of like knocks you out a little bit. It's a big time sedative.
Did you hallucinate?
No, I didn't hallucinate, but I would do a bump of it, and you kind of get spaced out. It reminded me of canned air a little bit. It really just blasts you out. And then I was playing Zelda on the N64 and then I would like nod out on it.
Yeah, I do that without ketamine.
So he's had a lot of drug problems in the past.
Well, Lamar Odom, whose battle with drug addiction led to a near-death experience, apparently. He's opening up about his use of a synthetic drug that he said helped him beat addiction, and that drug, of course, was ketamine. He's 41 years old, and he said being treated with small doses of ketamine under medical supervision for the last 2 years has helped keep him sober.
Cool.
I went to rehab and did some other things, but ketamine came into my life at the right time. He said in a recent interview, I'm feeling amazing. I'm alive. I'm sober. I'm happy, he said. Now, they describe ketamine in this article as a pain medication with hallucinogenic effects.
That's interesting.
It was approved in the 1970s as an anesthetic by the U.S. FDA. A decade later, in the 80s, it became a popular club drug. That was
I
my
never
recollection
hallucinated on it. Maybe I wasn't getting good shit.
Did you ever go to the Limelight? I used to go to the Limelight in the tail end of the 80s.
I might have gone. I was into hardcore, New York City hardcore music.
Oh, so more CBGBs.
We were at like Hammerheads and stuff like that, CBGBs.
Irving Plaza.
Yes, lots of Irving Plaza.
Health officials are now discovering that in small doses, the drug may be helpful to people suffering with everything from addiction to anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, suicidal feelings, and other mental health conditions.
Man, I should try this stuff. I suffer from all of that.
Odom, Lamar apparently had his first encounter with drugs at the age of 12, and then in 2015, they found him unresponsive in a Las Vegas brothel, having suffered 12 seizures, 6 strokes, and his heart stopping twice. Jesus. That must have been some hooker.
That was. What did that cost? My God.
Now
Not
he
funny
says,
though. That's tragic.
Yeah, it is. Of course. Small doses of ketamine he receives over the course of sessions that last an hour have left him without the urge to use drugs such as cocaine. I don't wake up looking to do lines or waking up in a dark place or feeling unfulfilled.
Or waking up in a brothel.
After having died. When Kobe passed away, the old Lamar, that would have been every excuse in the world for me to get high, but doing drugs didn't even enter my mind. So I didn't know a lot about ketamine, so I look it up on WebMD, and I guess it triggers the activity of a neurotransmitter called glutamate in the cortex of your brain, similar to Chinese food, I would think.
Yeah. Yeah, well, my recollection of it was it just kind of like spaced me out and slowed me down. Like things were slow. I guess there was auditory hallucinations where like the sound of things kind of slow. Like it was a long time ago, but I guess, yeah. If it's helping this guy who had a documented, as you can hear in this article, problems, nearly dying, and he was struggling, and he was one of these guys that he was so successful. He was at the pinnacle of NBA basketball, which is, some people scoff at the NBA, and I don't know why. These people are the most athletically skilled. Yeah. These are the top. Like Howard Stern used to say on his radio show, and I always thought this was it made a lot of sense. He was saying, because he was arguing with one of the guys on his show about whether or not NBA guys were athletes. And he's like, are you kidding me? They were comparing him to like golf guys because maybe one of the guys on his show was saying, Tiger Woods is the greatest athlete of all time. And Howard was like, no way. He's like, I said, it's LeBron James, of course. And then the way he said he thought of it was, if there was an alien race came to our planet and they said, we're here to destroy you, but we want to do this in one-on-one combat. Your best guy versus our best guy. Would you pick Tiger Woods or would you pick LeBron James to defend the planet?
Right. I might pick Colin McGregor, but okay.
Did you see the point?
Yeah, I get it. I mean, any sport that 80-year-old men can do reasonably well is probably...
Tiger Woods is a phenomenally talented athlete, but not the greatest athlete of all time. I mean, it's golf, so let's be real here. So
I mean, there have been some clinical trials that have shown quite a lot of promise with ketamine, although the amounts are heroic. The people who had cocaine addictions got ketamine through an IV for 5 days.
Holy shit. I took a bump.
I'm like, wow, that's... and then some motivational enhancement therapy as well, and the ketamine lowered the chances of relapsing into addiction more than just therapy alone. So, hey, whatever. I mean, psychedelics are weird. Some people, I guess they're great treatment modalities, but as our recent guest just discussed, sometimes you can be their own addictions, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Ecstasy, acid, you know. So,
but glad to hear that.
Whatever you do, be careful out there, kids.
Lamar Odom is doing well with this, and we'll more on ketamine therapy later on in one of our episodes.
We'll try and find a veterinarian to discuss.
Recovery in the news. And
Motherfucker. Oh, sorry. We don't do it at the end. Anyway, all right.
It's kind of arbitrary.
Well, okay.
And now it's time for Week in Weird. Hiker in Canada spots Ogopogo by Tim Binal. I'm saying the people who write this now because it's too good. A woman visiting Canada's Okanagan Lake earlier this week believes that she may have spotted the site's legendary monster Ogopogo. According
Somebody
to
just made that up today.
According to a local media report, the intriguing sighting occurred on Monday morning as Andrea, who opted not to reveal her last name, just like in Recovery, it's Andrea H.,
right,
who opted not to reveal her last name, was hiking in an area overlooking the massive body of water. Her peaceful commune with nature was shattered when she suddenly noticed a strange disturbance on the lake. Quote, "I saw something thrashing or something in the water," she recalled. "It was huge and it was black and it was moving pretty fast."
Was it Lamar Odom?
Sorry. And it had a wake behind it. Andrea went on to note that the creature, whatever it was, submerged itself, then reemerged, pulling a wake behind it. It then submerged itself again and disappeared. She stressed that there were no boats on the water at the time and, quote, "I saw birds dive bomb this thing as well." Looking back on the sighting, which she called, quote, "freaky," Andrea is bewildered. They're always bewildered. I love this.
Of course.
She was bewildered by the whole experience, musing that, quote, "there was something weird going on," end quote,
That's
at
insightful.
the lake that morning. Regarding what the oddity could have been, although she conceded that it might have been a sturgeon, the sheer size of the animal seemed to make her question that
It was a
assessment.
very big sturgeon.
Alas, as is often the case with such wondrous events,
Alas.
Andrea only thought to snap a picture near the end of the sighting, and unfortunately her photo is fairly harder to decipher due to both the timing and her distance from the water, which was about 300 feet below her. Be that as it may, whatever she witnessed left an impression on her as she declared, quote, "I definitely will not be jumping off a boat in the middle of the lake this summer. There's no freaking way," end quote. And that...
Well, thanks, Andrea. It was a sturgeon, just to let you know.
Why can't it be the Ogopogo? Why does it have to be a sturgeon?
I mean, what is this, some Loch Ness Monster ripoff kind of thing?
It could be.
Yeah.
I mean, there's plenty of cryptids floating around in these
My
lakes.
name is Andrea, and I'm a cryptozoologist.
And that is Week in Weird. Well, that about does it for today. Thank you so much for listening. Visit us at middleagesrecovery.com and check out our new merch page. Join the discussion on our exclusive and private Facebook group. If you need to talk, don't hesitate to reach out to us on social media.
Reach out and touch us.
Reach out and touch someone. Check out our show notes. Find us on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, and Twitter. Tweet us at twat you twit. Please go to your Apple Podcast app or iTunes on your PC, and 5-star reviews will be read on the air.
You know, just to break in before we finished, do you think people listen to us at like 1.5 or 2 times speed? I know somebody mentioned they did
People
that on
do that.
Facebook, and I'm thinking like how insanely fast that would be, because we're New Yorkers, right?
Yeah.
And so we just vomit out,
Yeah.
words as fast as we can possibly do it. And what that must sound like, we should do a little clip of that, of what we sound like.
Let's go like
especially when we do
1.5.
the fast stuff at the beginning and the end.
It's actually a funny thing. Somebody did this to Dopey Dave, where they had the Dopey podcast on it like a quarter speed, like slower, and it sounded
everybody
like
sounds wasted when you do that.
Wasted, it's like really. So
Anyway,
in the
sorry.
future, that's
Yeah.
coming. So as we say, non proficiat perfectum.
Progress, not perfection. I got it right this week.
Thank you.
Yes.
See you next time.
Bye. Be good also.